Hello, everybody. Welcome to Women on the Right. If you want to find out more about Women on the Right and all of that we are up to, please go to womenontheright.org. I'm Tamra hosting today, and so thrilled to have Sherronna Bishop with us. Did I say your name right?
You did so good. I'm so impressed.
Okay. It's such a beautiful name. And Sherronna is just making things happen in Colorado and particularly on the Western Slope. And we just want to help her keep expanding that across the state. She just has some great ideas for activism, for taking back our state. And so we're thrilled to have you, Sherronna.
Thank you so much. First of all, I just want to say too, I have had the pleasure of watching women like you long before I was ever on the scene, doing your work and spreading the conservative message, that conservatism equals freedom and it equals a good life. And all of the work that you've been doing, I just want to thank you for that, because you've opened up the door for people like me, that there's things that are possible without having to be a politician, that you can make a real impact without having to officially be in a title or a position like that. So thank you so much for that. And we have done a lot in a short amount of time that I think has helped to ignite regular people. I had the great experience, a mutual friend of ours, Bobby Daniel, who chose to step up and really start mentoring a group of moms in our local community. And I was one of those moms. I was just sitting there going, there's something really wrong here with our public school system. And I can't articulate it, but I just know this doesn't seem right. This isn't working out very well. 23% reading proficiency doesn't sound like we're winning. And I started talking with her over these values, these fundamental principles. And really from there is where things took off, because once you know your rights, once you know founding principles, once you know the proper role of government, you're ready to go. You're ready to go fight, because the majority, 95% of the population, does not know that stuff anymore. They are not being properly educated in our public school system. And if they haven't gone seeking it out, then it probably has escaped them. And so that's been our mission with America's Mom and the efforts that we've made through Colorado Revival and what we called originally our Concerned Citizens meetings, was to empower regular people to start holding their elected officials accountable for their first obligation, which was to defend their constitutional rights, not take them away. Yeah. And that's really how everything began. And I was looking actually at our social media the other day, and we started our official America's Mom movement in April of 2019. So we're coming up on our 2-year anniversary. And I have to say, we really have been able to do quite a bit in a short amount of time, because people are hungry. They're really hungry for truth. They know that something's wrong, and they're looking for people who are willing to be courageous, who are willing to step up and say exactly what it is that isn't right, and to stop sugarcoating it, stop trying to constantly just get along, move along to get along, right? And have this kind of facade of peace or facade of unity. And, unity can't be achieved without truth. We can't have unity with this fake talk that's going on, like we're seeing around the nation right now. So that's really been our effort. And it's been our movement, and it's been inspired because of great women like you, who've mentored other great women like Bobby, who decided to pull all of us moms together and start mentoring us, because we will do anything for our kids.
Yes,
we'll give up anything for our kids.
Yes, we will
fight any battle for our kids.
And I love that, that you're America's mom, and you're gathering other moms of America, if you will, and just that nurturing quality of women. I'm old-fashioned. I believe there are certain things that are distinct between men and women, biological men and biological women. And certainly men are very caring and take care, but women have a specific way that we do that, in that nurturing quality and that encourage, that ability to encourage and throw our arm around someone and bring them along. And I think the fact that you're doing that, and I can just see that just comes out of you. And I think that's very powerful right now for our movement. To have not only the rhetoric, not only the teaching and the principles, but also this encouragement. So tell us about Colorado Revival. I have to admit, when I first heard it, I was like, oh, she must be preaching the gospel all over the state. But I thought it was very clever, because of course, I think you're a person of faith, and that's wonderful too. But I know you're wanting to help communities revive and encourage them. And I just want to hear about it in general. And then another question I have, that you can keep in mind as you're sharing, that you can share with me, is, the obvious, which is the barrier of these public health mandates that really keep businesses from being able to revive themselves, if you will, while these mandates are still in place. Maybe you can speak to that as well.
Absolutely. Well, I would say, first of all, it is my Christianity that compels me to do this, that compels me to do the right thing, regardless of the consequences. And there have been consequences, and there has been fallout. There has been, um, the attempt to cancel us. I think it's very telling that when the most um, triggering, I would say the most triggering post we ever did leading up to the Colorado Business Revival and this whole pushback on COVID policies was a picture of a mother. She's a friend of mine. She had just gotten done telling her daughter that, no, honey, we can't go to the park because the parks are all closed and locked down. And she took a picture of herself and she was crying. And it was pretty moving. You're just kind of like, man, this is weird. Why are we not letting our kids go to parks? I mean, I realize this thing is out there, but these are little kids and they should be at the park. That alone right there triggered 157,000 bots from Zuckerberg's Facebook world. And they literally swarmed and attacked and attacked and attacked. And we were forced to shut down our page for 24 hours to clean up all the bots and get them out. And it was really telling to me in that moment, first of all, winning, right? Mothers showing their true concern, that innate knowing that this is not right. And then two, that we were already challenging the narrative of the COVID policies, because the stats were already coming out, the data was coming out. It hadn't been politicized yet. We had done previous studies on SARS, on COVID, on human coronaviruses, and what they were telling us wasn't really equaling the policies that were being put into place. So Colorado Business Revival really started because I was one of those people. I own a niche business and I'm seasonal. So I only have a certain time of the year that I really work a lot. And I was called non-essential. Not only was I called non-essential, but we work with, 35, 40 different vendors in our industry who were also called non-essential. We had businesses that had poured millions of dollars into their venues, into their businesses, because 2020 was going to be the biggest year ever for the industry I work in. And they were all deemed non-essential, told to sit at home and just wait for government to give us permission. Well, the challenge with that was the industry that I'm in, the people that were getting married were nurses. They were continuing on to hold their dates. And I thought, that's odd. That's really odd. Why are they moving forward? What is it that they know that we all aren't being told? And I began to ask questions, just a regular citizen asking questions. For all that we do publicly, I'm just a regular person in my own community, doesn't even know. We just live our lives. It's just nothing. And so they were living their lives. And I was like, why do they get to live their lives? They're essential. And I'm deemed non-essential. It was just mind blowing. I haven't heard those words since I watched Schindler's List. And you had people groups being called non-essential and essential. And for me, it really just quickened my heart. I also, when I saw people tattling on one another, when I saw fathers being hauled away in handcuffs from public parks because they dared venture out with their little girl or their children to play. I mean, this was completely an overreach and out of the proper role of government. They are not there to keep our health for us. They are there to protect our rights. And so I was shocked. We started holding concerned citizens meetings pretty quickly, which a concerned citizens meeting is just us gathering and bringing our elected officials there, getting them there to start speaking out against these policies. When the data was obviously not matching the impact of the policies in Colorado, the economic devastation, our children not being in school, our children being isolated and kept at home. For me, I'm a mother of 4. That's what I was really paying attention to, was the impact on my kids and what was happening with them. And then the children they were involved with. I have teenagers and I have littles. So I was seeing it all. Parents not letting their kids come and play with my kids because they were so scared. It just didn't make sense. So the business revival, obviously we were coming up on 9 months back in September of restrictions, 9 months of flatten the 2-week curve, right? And businesses were dying. We're having people waiting for another bailout. We're having people start talking about it would be a shot in exchange for your freedoms, 2 masks in exchange for your freedom again. All these things, they just didn't make sense. Have a great friend, Eric Mutzos from Utah. He headed up the Utah Business Revival, and he made a documentary called Non-Essential. And it was basically the 9 months leading up to that condensed into 45 minutes. I watched the film and I said, that's it, we're done. We're done, because it's very clearly, it's very obvious that COVID is real, no doubt. It's also very obvious that it's been hijacked by politicians who are self-serving, self-seeking, and do not care about us nobodies. They're doing this for their own betterment. And as far as it pertains to Polis, even if he wanted to at this point set us free in Colorado, he can't do it because he's waiting on that money. And there's a couple things that have to be in place to get those federal dollars. Number one, you have to have a mask mandate. You can't get the federal dollars without your mask mandate. So Colorado, it's not going to happen, right? He's not lifting the mandates because he can't. He needs that money. I believe a lot of that money has already been spent. And to watch him talk about the new $600 million stimulus he plans to inject into the Colorado economy is hilarious. Because what he could just do is say, we're done. Open your businesses 100% and let's get back to work. But instead, the government creates a problem, as always, and then tries to be the solution for it. And so Colorado Business Revival is us saying, in this big statement that we're doing on Saturday, March 20th, we're having vendors from all over the state, including Wyoming, who are coming out to promote their businesses. They can be open 100%. They can serve everybody. We know how to keep our communities safe. We know what to do within our own backyards. They're going to, I pray to God, they just make a ton of money. They start to recover and recruit what the government told them they could not do, which is your right to production. What government has done during these COVID policies in the state of Colorado is violate one constitutional amendment after another. The Fourth Amendment protects your right to production. And if there's a problem, there's a due process we're supposed to go through. That due process has been violated left and right. And for those who are following the Dr. Zach Almy story in Boulder, Colorado, that's a primary example of a judge litigating from his bench. You're going to have to go look it up because it's worth your time. But this is a man who said, I'm not going to force these mandates on my clients. He's a doctor. And he knows.
Sherronna, just to jump in real quick.
Yeah.
So when you're meeting with in these areas, are you saying that businesses are opening that day, making a statement by opening, even though they've been told, or opening to full capacity, or opening without masks, or whatever mandates were in place, that they're doing that on that day if they so choose? Is that, did I hear you correctly?
That is what we want to see people doing. And here's the thing, we're not here to tell anybody how to do it. That's not our role, and it's not the government's role. They need to decide what is the best for their personal business and move forward. We've begun providing the flyers for their doors that say, hey, we're not the mask police. Do what's best for you at your own risk. That is, that's correct. That's how it should be. But we are, we're very much advocating open your businesses and live free. Every act of living right now is defiance to the government. It is. It's defiance to unconstitutional mandates that are not laws. And we've got to do that because if we don't, then we're never going to get back to a real sense of normalcy. So we're telling them at these non-essential revivals, you've got to decide what you're going to do today. You've got to.
So it isn't so much that day as it is, we're here to encourage you to make your own decisions, whether it's today or tomorrow or next week or whenever. And, you know, I was just in preparation. I mean, I was just, boning up, making sure I had the right perspective from a Colorado legal standpoint. And sure enough, there it is, ironclad on the Colorado COVID website, if you will, and the governor's mandates, and connecting that with the mandates coming from the Colorado Department of Health and Environment, CDHP, I think. And so, they make it very clear, don't they? They make it very clear that the mandates have the force of law, and that anyone who, whether it's a business owner or whoever, an individual that is defying those mandates, that yes, they can be arrested, or they can have their business license taken away. And so what I hear you saying is, go ahead.
One just an adjustment.
Not that I agree with that or think that's
Yeah,
a good normal, because I don't. But
that is what
it
they're
is in place.
offering.
Yeah.
That is what they're offering. So technically, what it comes down to is the only people who have the ability to enforce the governor's mandates is the Department of Public Health and your local DA. So your local DA has to decide if he's going to prosecute. He's got to decide if he's actually going to take this before a judge and he's going to really do this to a local business. We rely on community. We rely on each other to decide what kind of community we want to live in. What kind of trust do we want to have in our communities? And for the most part in Colorado, a lot of communities have rejected the idea that they would allow their police officers to actually enforce this, find this, arrest anybody, especially where I live. You're just not going to see that kind of behavior. And when you do, it's a very big deal because that's not the kind of community culture that we nurture here in our backyard. So technically, the CDPHE has admitted that the only people who can enforce their mandates is public health and your local DA, which I find really comforting. Sheriffs are not going to enforce this stuff. Local police departments, they're going to get you for trespassing, maybe without a
Right.
mask on. But
Sure.
essentially, and that's what we're making sure to let people know. Yeah, I see what's written on paper. I see what's written on the website. But when it comes down to it, laws are only passed through the legislature, and these have not gone through the legislature. And to have a narrow and compelling reason for the governor to continue his mandates month after
Right.
month after month is being ignored by the judiciary in Colorado.
Right. And
It's being
and
ignored.
that's true. The courts really, and of course, Representative Patrick Neville tried to file a lawsuit against Polis. It would be quite expensive, I think, to really try to take that to court. But the challenge is to emergency powers, because emergency powers, once you've declared and you know this, but for our listeners, once you've declared an emergency, you as the governor, then the various mandates that come along with the emergency under the umbrella of that emergency have the force of law. And that's where it gets sticky, because in that sense, they are allowed to create these mandates. We all might completely disagree with them and not see the need for them at all certainly at this point, if not for a while now. But yet, technically speaking, they have the force of law. And so that is where I think we need to see a court challenge to the emergency powers. And you may know there have been, I know Senator Bob Gardner from Colorado Springs, and there have been a few other Republican bills proposed to try to weaken that and modify that emergency, the emergency powers, and change some of the process with that. Obviously, they have a trifecta, the Democrats in Denver. So, there's no way that a Republican bill really is going to get passed along those lines. So, yeah, we really are between a rock and a hard place from a legal standpoint, and things that have the force of law. So what I hear you saying is, obviously you're not telling anyone to do anything. You're just trying to bring courage to people to stand up against, if they so choose, laws that aren't just, that come out of these emergency powers that are hard to prove that we still have the need for them, whether or not we're in an emergency. I think that's bothered me since the beginning. I mean, since shortly after the beginning. I think everybody in the very beginning was going, what's happening, but once it became apparent, that it didn't have as deadly of an effect as everyone thought it might, I think we were all questioning.
And the Department of Public Health, so there's a couple things I would say. Number one, we the people no longer give consent to be governed this way. And our Colorado Constitution, Article 2 states that once we no longer give consent to be governed this way, we are required as we the people to push back. And I have talked with a lot of elected officials rather, who are very happy that we're pushing back, who are very grateful that we're publicly pushing back, because it gives them the opportunity to say, you know what, our people just aren't giving consent to this anymore. We can't continue to keep them locked up because they're no longer consenting to it. So what do you want us to do? Arrest everybody? We don't have the manpower for that. You just defunded our police. I mean, you start to recognize that, yes, okay, it may have the weight, the force of law, but only if the law is willing to enforce it. And that's not happening. And then secondly, the people are rising up and saying we've had enough. And so therefore, we have to help the governor out, right? We've got to help him out to change the direction he's going and let him know, Article 2, we no longer consent to this way you're governing us, governor. And so therefore, you need to modify the way you're governing because we no longer are buying the narrative. We're not buying the story. You know, Mark Baisley, you might remember at the beginning of the summer, attempted to sue the Department of Public Health, Jill Ryan, because she was fabricating death certificates. You know, and so what did they do? Polis went in and he changed the way they write death certificates to save the Colorado Department of Public Health from the kind of accountability they should have had from day one. And that's an amazing thing that he did to shine the light on Department of Public Health. You guys, they are not elected. They walk around with zero accountability, ruining people's livelihoods, their businesses. They literally, Tamra, they peer between the blinds of businesses to check on people and see if they're abiding by these mandates. It's disgusting. It's immoral. It's not. It's just can't go on this way. We don't live this way in Colorado.
Exactly. Well, maybe you should try to get a meeting with the governor. I would encourage
Trust me,
you.
I've tried, and he ran so fast. He was guarded by 5 security officers.
I would love it if he would meet with you.
Oh, Tamra, it will never happen.
But for whatever it would be worth, but it's a gesture nonetheless. So
absolutely,
good for you for trying. So let's talk about schools. I was reading today, a lot of the Denver school districts, the larger school districts are planning to open the first week of April. I see that's happening in Colorado Springs as well, and that there won't be a hybrid anymore after that. So it will be in-person learning, or they can choose to do the online school. Not all districts have that option, but some are adding it. And then I guess Fridays are off now for homework at home. Whatever the variety of things are, but give me your thoughts, and especially with school age kids, and I don't have those right now. So our kids are in their careers, but I can't even imagine what that's been like for you and so many moms. Just not having that stability for their kids with their education.
Tamra, I'm really glad that you're bringing this up because we all agree to certain social systems and the reason those social systems are there is they provide protection, boundaries, schedules, success. They cause a lot of us in society to flourish. And by removing these social structures for kids, we have seen, and this is quite incredible, an 800% increase in child pornography during COVID. Did you know that? Viewership of child pornography. We have seen that throughout the United States, 3 million children we know for sure are unaccounted for. 3 million American children are just completely unaccounted for in America. Not to mention all the kids that have just checked out of learning. I had 2 high schoolers. I've got 2 younger ones, and they have all struggled. I think initially we all understood and we said, no problem. We don't know what this is. This is our community. Let's work together. But once we learned and realized that this was not going to be what we thought it was, the children were the least impacted by COVID. They were not super spreaders. There's been incredible studies done now. We know exactly where we stand on everything, right? Well, the teachers' unions began to prohibit the ability for teachers to come back to school. They began to prohibit the ability for schools to make their own independent decisions based on what was best for the students that they are charged with educating. And I personally have worked with quite a few teachers over on the Eastern Slope, and to hear their stories about they're literally working under the radar. They're bringing kids into school and doing it covertly. I mean, this is where we've deteriorated to, where people literally are doing things they would never normally do because thank God they have a conscience and they understand what children actually need. They need these social structures. They need accountability. They need to be being educated because here's what happens. Their view of the future diminishes. They lose hope. They become despondent. They become despairing. They become depressed. And we've seen as of yesterday, my own knowledge, 36 children have committed suicide since school began, and in Colorado, and you just have to go. How much of this is just forgive the term normal, and how much of this really is related to a despondency about the future? Is there a hope for their future? Is this the new normal as they've been touting? Kids are resilient. But what we've asked them to do to protect the lives and health of adults, that's abuse. I don't ask my children to
Mhm.
protect the health of adults.
Right.
I
Good
don't tell my
point.
children they're killing grandma if they don't put a mask on. Masking up children has been incredibly dangerous, number
Yes.
one, for their health, for their mental well-being. I've seen slips in Colorado of teachers handing out little checklists to the kids that say, you know, if they've kept their mask on, they get check marks. And then it says
Mhm.
fresh air. They get to breathe fresh air at the bottom as
Oh
their
my
reward. It
goodness.
literally says fresh air.
Oh my
I was
goodness.
like, oh my gosh. So we pulled our two children, our younger children, out of school, and said, we're not going to participate in this. This is
Mhm.
state sanctioned child abuse of children. So I'm relieved and thankful to see that they are going to be having children come back to school, not because I think the public school system is doing an amazing job, but because our kids need these social structures. They
Yes.
need these things. We've all determined as a society that this is a great way to start seeing more of them flourish than otherwise would. So I support that. And one more further thing that should be analyzed right now is the masking up of kids. We need to unmask our children and
Mhm.
allow them to get back to normal living. And that this is not that. What
I
they're doing
agree.
and what we've allowed is
Totally.
not that.
Oh my goodness. Well, it has been amazing to talk with you today and just hear your wisdom, hear your insights, just learn about how you're encouraging women, but men and women, and business owners and people that are, you know, whose jobs that rely on businesses being open, and just bringing that encouragement regarding freedom and inspiration and courage. So thank you so much for all that you do, Sherronna, and I'm glad that we could have this time together.
Tamara, thank you. And thank you for elevating the nobodies in this
Oh,
world.
good.
I really appreciate you. Thank you so much. Have a blessed
Oh,
day.
thank you so much. Bye bye.